This is a program about addiction and recovery and social awareness, not a sponsored megaphone for anyone but myself. That being said, if you like what I'm doing or you think someone else might benefit from it, please click the like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix, or share it with someone that you think will like it, or someone that you think will hate it. That could be fun too. Welcome back, Loudmouths. Yes, I am still going with that. Listeners who've made questionable life choices doesn't fit on any of the merch. There's no merch. Today we're taking a field trip into the 1980s. Not the fun cocaine-fueled Wall Street version that spawned Patrick Bateman and Trump's Taj Mahal, but the small-town version where frosted tips were mandatory and your guidance counselor's best career advice was, have you considered the military? A place where different was dangerous and everybody's dirty laundry was hung out to dry, and all of that laundry had padded shoulders or was acid-washed denim. A town so small that the biggest industry was the gossip mill. The kind of place where your third grade teacher was your neighbor's cousin who went to school with your mom's hairdresser, who went to church with your dad's first wife's ex-husband in high school. And if anxiety and confusion had a baby, and then that baby got really into hockey, but was terrible at it, that would be me. I was like a human version of those magic 8 balls, but instead of reply, hazy, try again, my internal responses were all variations of everything is terrible and it's all your fault. I looked like the before picture in a Proactive commercial that they decided was too depressing to air. All of that self-loathing and chaos being filed away went into a secrets box that I had buried deep in my psyche. And, from the outside, I was winning the genetic lottery. I was living the dream, positioned to inherit all the privilege and opportunity that a 1980s small town white boy could ever hope for. What nobody saw was the secrets box that I was hiding. This mental filing cabinet where I kept all of the things that I felt like couldn't be spoken, couldn't be shared, couldn't be acknowledged without risking complete social annihilation. File number 1 was called The Unmentionable. As I've mentioned before, I had been sexually abused, and not by the stereotypical stranger in a van offering candy, but by someone known, someone whose betrayal taught me that the world was fundamentally unsafe. And that's why the Stranger Danger campaign back then was so destructive. I thought that bad people wore trench coats and fedoras and hung out in the shadows of cities' alleyways. Nobody told me that, I might know them. And to this day, I assume everybody I meet has a twisted dark side that they're masking. And that's a core belief that I'm working really hard on trying to change. File number 2, I called Brain Go Vroom. My brain worked like a radio stuck between stations, picking up everything, tuning into nothing. ADHD wasn't even a diagnosis that I could have had back then. It was just, not applying yourself, which was adult speak for, we don't know what's wrong with you, but we're pretty sure it's your fault. Every classroom felt like I was being waterboarded with information I couldn't process while someone was getting mad at me for drowning. File number 3, dysmorphia. I felt fundamentally wrong, like I'd been assembled incorrectly, like everyone else got an instruction manual for being a human, and mine was written in a language I couldn't understand. So, any language other than English. Under fluorescent lights, and the 1980s were the fluorescent light decade. I looked like something that crawled out of a drain. My face and back were topographical maps of adolescent hormonal imbalances, and my body was a collection of awkward angles that didn't quite fit together properly, and my social skills were somewhere between recently lobotomized and China shop bull. Were those feelings accurate? Probably not. But, I'm carrying around this collection of secrets that felt like they would kill me if people discovered them. And in a town where being different was treated like a contagious disease and conformity was the only acceptable form of existence. And do you know what I discovered? Drugs and alcohol were magical. Not in a gateway to enlightenment way, but in a suddenly I can talk to people without wanting to crawl into a hole and die kind of way. In a suddenly the secrets box gets locked up tight way. And, in a maybe I'm not sad anymore kind of way. It's fall, and the magic mushrooms in my town were everywhere. I'm not talking about some exotic psychedelic adventure. I'm talking about walking through any patch of grass in town and finding psilocybin mushrooms growing like nature's own pharmaceutical garden. For about 2 weeks every autumn, you could get enlightened or terrified just by walking in grass after the rain. And meanwhile, downtown at the pool hall, which was, less recreational billiards establishment and more criminal distribution center with pool tables, there was a guy who kept his entire, operation in his afro. And I mean, all of it, like, LSD tabs, joints, whatever he needed, he'd reach into that magnificent hair sculpture and produce it like some kind of follicular drug wizard. 3 joints for $5, which in 1980s money was roughly equivalent to trading your lunch money for a bad reputation. And here's the thing about my town that, nobody that I know really talks about. The racism, the homophobia, the casual cruelty that was just part of the cultural wallpaper. This wasn't some backwards place in decades past. This was, supposedly enlightened society in the 1980s. But hatred was still flowing through that town like a underground river, poisoning everything it touched. The racism was constant and casual. Jokes that would make your skin crawl were just humor. The homophobia was vicious and omnipresent. Being called gay was the ultimate insult, or an accusation that threatened a kid's acceptance until the day they could finally get out of that place. And actual gay people were talked about like they were either diseased or dangerous, and usually both, actually. And, there I was, I'm white, straight, but totally confused by all this ignorance, carrying, these secrets, and because of all of that, convinced that I was fundamentally disgusting. I couldn't talk to girls unless I was drunk enough to forget that I felt like something that belonged under a bridge, demanding toll. And the cruelest part, I desperately wanted to be understood. I wanted someone to see past the awkwardness and the secrets and the chemically induced confidence and the barely contained rage, and understand that inside of all that chaos was, just a kid who wanted to believe that he mattered. But I couldn't find the words. I mean, how do you tell someone that your brain feels like a radio picking up 20 stations at once? How do you explain that you carry secrets that feel like they're physically crushing you? How do you ask for help when asking for help means that you're admitting that you're defective and broken? So instead, I pushed away everyone who might have helped. Teachers who tried to reach out got attitude. Family members who asked questions got lies or silence or anger. Anything to keep them from getting close enough to see the truth. And that's how drugs and alcohol became my security blanket, my social lubricant, my emotional anesthesia, my solution to the problem of being alive in a world that felt impossibly complicated and dangerous.
The Loudness McEvil Symposium is brought to you in part by
Hi there, friend. Are you tired of making good decisions? Fed up with remembering important events? Sick of having healthy relationships and a functioning liver? Well, have we got the product for you? Alcohol. The world's oldest and most trusted problem solver. For over 9,000 years, alcohol has been helping humans make terrible choices with confidence. Alcohol has been there for every major historical disaster. The fall of Rome? Alcohol. World War I? You got that right, Johnny. World War II? The Axis wanted cognac. All of the wars ever? Ordered by psychotic alcoholics. But don't pass out yet. There's more. Alcohol literally invented taxation. You're welcome. Looking to spice up your personal life? Our patented formula guarantees text to your ex at 2 a.m. that you'll definitely regret. The confidence to tell your boss exactly what you think. You'll mistake potted plants for urinals. Shame-inducing promiscuity. The ability to turn any gathering into a 911 call. From dollar store cooking wine to $1,000 champagne, we've got a bankruptcy option for every budget. Here's looking at you, vanilla extract. Side effects may include breaking out in handcuffs, a bad case of divorce, spontaneous unemployment, cirrhosis, psychosis, thrombosis, necrosis, and halitosis, broken heart disease, strokes and pokes, financial ruin, vehicular manslaughter, and the inexplicable urge to sing karaoke. If you experience healthy relationships or personal growth, discontinue use of alcohol immediately and consult your bartender. Remember, when life gives you lemons, let them ferment. So forget about therapy, exercise, and meaningful connections. Grab a bottle of alcohol today.
So here's what I want everyone listening to understand. I looked fine-ish from the outside. At least I looked privileged, fortunate, set up for success. I had every advantage that society could offer a young white kid. And I was planning to kill myself. Not end my journey, not exit my story. Yeah, YouTube doesn't let me say the word without taking away my reach, which is exactly the problem. We've become so terrified of discomfort that we've sanitized the language of suffering until it means nothing. We've wrapped pain in bubble wrap and we call it progress. Unhoused is my favorite example of this performance. There is no better illustration of people changing vocabulary to make themselves feel better while doing absolutely nothing to create actual change. I'll post a black square and I'll call homeless people unhoused, and I'll update my pronouns and tell myself I'm the arbiter of social justice. Meanwhile, the guy sleeping under the overpass still doesn't have a bed. But, at least we're not making ourselves uncomfortable with accurate language. You know what? I'm not monetized anyway, YouTube, so let's be crystal clear. I was planning suicide. I was a homeless junkie. I was a drug addict, not a person experiencing homelessness with substance use challenges. I was a strung out disaster, living in alleys, shooting poison into my veins, and wishing for the courage to stop existing. Those aren't slurs. That's my reality. And while everyone's busy policing language to protect themselves from feeling bad, people are dying from the actual problems that you're too uncomfortable to talk about. So, if you want to help, stop changing the words and start changing the systems. Your loved ones don't need a society that's mastered the art of comfortable euphemisms. They need a society brave enough to stare directly at the ugly truths and do something about them. They don't need better branding for their suffering. They need housing. They need healthcare. They need treatment that's accessible, not aspirational. They need a world that offers help instead of judgment, resources instead of rhetoric, and actions instead of semantics. They need to be more afraid of their own death than we are of our own discomfort. I was an expert at wearing masks, at performing normalcy, at convincing everyone around me that I was fine when I was actually drowning in plain sight. The drugs and alcohol weren't just recreational for me. They were life support. And the decades of misery that I lived, it was all preventable. Every bit of it was preventable with one, not so simple thing: communication. So quit worrying about the head of your HR department and talk. If I could have found the words to say, I'm drowning, or, I wouldn't have said I'm drowning, but I need help. someone would have thrown me a life preserver, you know? If I could have said something terrible happened to me and I don't know how to process it, someone would have helped me find the resources. If I could have said my brain works differently and I'm really struggling in class, someone would have helped me understand that different doesn't mean busted. But communication requires two things: someone brave enough to speak and someone safe enough to listen. The speaker, me, I was terrified of the consequences of honesty. I felt like admitting problems was admitting weakness, and that asking for help was giving up, that being different was being wrong and outcast. And the listeners, well, because of all of the things I just said, I never got to find out that there were lots of them. I was too scared to give them a chance. So in my adulthood, I learned how to lie. I learned to hide. I learned to medicate. And I tried to fade away quietly so I wouldn't inconvenience anyone. But, of course I did inconvenience a lot of people. Just to remind everybody quickly of what my life has been like in a nutshell, I graduated high school barely hanging on to a realistic version of a productive future for myself. I did a year of university where I majored in substance experimentation and groping. Then I bounced from coast to coast, school to school, hoping I'd win a lottery ticket without buying a ticket. My 20s were spent married, struggling in a losing battle with opiates and cocaine. By my mid-30s, my tenuous grip on decency had slipped and I was homeless, briefly employed, homeless again, briefly incarcerated, repeat, until about 21 months ago. If you want to prevent your kid from going down the path that I went down, here's a few tips, and from my point of view. These are things that I feel may have helped me and can possibly help you. But again, I am not certified to give advice. These are simply my observations. Create space for truth. Make it safe for your loved one to be honest about struggle. Show them that problems are meant to be solved with help and not hidden. Tell them they don't have to be alone, and demonstrate that asking for help is a sign of intelligence, not a sign of weakness. And most importantly, listen without judgment when they finally have the courage to speak. And any kid who might be listening, the secrets that feel like they'll destroy you if you share them are the ones that will destroy you if you don't. Please take my word for that. The abuse that I carried in silence for decades, talking about it didn't destroy me or my family. It helped me to heal, and it helped them to understand. And, to be clear, I've never shared details about it, and I never will, because they don't matter. They don't matter anymore, and they'd only victimize more innocent people, and I'm not letting my abuser take up one more second of mine or anyone else's life. I'm only talking about it now because I feel like it's important. And I think it's helpful for my family to know that in conjunction with undiagnosed mental health issues, trauma played a big role in why I disappeared. I mean, it hurt them, but it's helpful in that they can make sense of that easier than my kid chose this. And the ADHD or whatever that made me feel like I wasn't smart enough or talented enough, getting diagnosed with that and treated didn't make me weak. It made me, or it has made me, functional. I'm still pretty weird, but, now I have a daytimer. The depression and suicidal ideation that felt like moral failures, addressing them didn't make me crazy. It saved my life. And I had to go through decades of substance abuse, relationship disasters, and general chaos before I learned that lesson. And I had to spiral through 20 years of self-destruction before I figured out that the things I was hiding were the same things that were causing all of the scars and handcuffs. Your kids don't have to do that. You kids don't have to do that. Nobody has to do that. They don't have to spend decades in chemical purgatory because they're too afraid to ask for help with problems that, have solutions. But they will if they don't feel safe to tell the truth. They will if they feel fear, shame, or blame, or attempts to fix them instead of understanding them. They will if you make their problems about your reputation or your parenting or your family's image instead of about their pain and their needs. Your kids, your teenagers, your young adults, or even your full-grown adults who seem to have everything going for them, they might be carrying secrets. They might be struggling with things they don't have words for. They might be self-medicating with substances, and you can't even imagine them doing that. Not because they're dramatic or attention-seeking or manipulative, but because the pain feels heavier than the weight of existence itself. The solution isn't more rules or stricter punishments or better drug tests. The solution is communication. Real, honest, terrifying communication. And odds are they're just struggling with the typical angst stuff that feels apocalyptic at the time. Stuff that in the long run, it's just a life lesson that, they'll probably laugh about later. I refused to communicate. I built fences around my walls, and then I built a moat. And then I filled the moat with Jack Daniels. But here's my challenge to every parent or spouse or partner who's listening right now. Go home tonight and tell your person that you love them no matter what they're carrying, no matter what they've done, no matter what's been done to them. Tell them that there's no secret too big, no problem too complicated, no mistake too terrible for you to handle together. And then prove it by listening without judgment when they test that promise. Odds are you'll find out some weird thing that you never would have guessed was coming, but nothing that's going to make you question your entire existence. And truth, however ugly or complicated or frightening, is always preferable to the alternatives, like decades of self-medication, relationship disasters, missed opportunities, festering secrets. Your kids are going to face struggles. They're going to carry pain. They're going to encounter problems that feel unsolvable and feelings that feel unshakable. Same for your adult substance abusers. Their pain will just be more calloused. So, you'll have to file and tweeze a bit to get to it. But the question is, are you going to be a safe place for them to bring those struggles, or are you going to be another reason for them to keep it hidden? It's your choice, but communication really is the key, not just to preventing addiction, but to preventing the kind of isolation and despair that makes addiction feel like a viable option. So give your loved ones the gift of safety to be honest about their pain, the confidence that problems have solutions, the knowledge that they're loved, and not in spite of their struggles, but including their struggles. And that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. There is a lot of content to choose from. Most of it's more entertaining than me telling you how I feel about the world. Just remember, the secrets that you're carrying aren't as scary as you think, and they are scarier than they need to be if you're carrying them alone.